Welcome to another UDM tutorial video. The primary purpose of this video is to illustrate how to create moving averages within the query editor. We will work with a butter data published by Dairy Market News, as well as announced butter price published by the AMS. So let's first load the individual tables. From Dairy Market News monthly averages, we will choose the column report period, of course, as well as butter grade AA spot price. Transform the report to date only. Close and load. Repeat the process with announced butter price. Announcement of class and component prices monthly. Choose columns, report period, and butter product price average. Again, make the date. Close and load. We will now create a new query by combining the existing two queries. The merge will happen, or the join will be done on the report periods, and we will want the inner join so that the new month shows up only when both reports have been published for that month. Expand the table. And let's rename these columns to something simpler. I'll call this simply CME. And I will call this AMS. For report period, I will call it month. Next, we want to create a basis, custom column. Let's call it simply basis. It's going to be CME minus AMS. And let's close and load and take stock of where we are so far. We have created a table that contains only CME monthly average butter prices, announced butter prices, and the basis defined as CME minus the AMS. Let's call this butter, and we can actually remove the other columns. What matters is that we don't delete the queries. The queries will turn to connection only. We also don't need sheet 1. Okay, so we have one table in our file and one query that populates it. Let's continue working now to create the moving average. Before we go into query editor, I want to take us through the logic that we will use to create the moving average. The way moving average is, if we want 12-month moving average, the way that would be created in Excel, you would simply say average of the previous 12 months, including the current month, for example. And then you would have to propagate that column further, like this. So let's take this process and see what are the, how can we reconceptualize this in terms of formulas we can use in query editor. Well, we can imagine it, we will be working with lists in Query Editor. So to calculate this number, we will start by grabbing the list of all bases up and through that month. Then we will select the last 12 months. Then we will sum it up. And then we will divide that by 12. These 4 steps that I have outlined here is what we are going to code now in the Query Editor. Rather than manually calculating moving average in Excel, we will replicate this in the Query Editor, and none of this will be necessary in Excel anymore, so I can delete it. Going back to the Query Editor, we will start by adding an index column. Before we do that, we want to make sure that our months are ordered ascending. And then in the add column, index column from 1. At this point, we need to start using the advanced editor, as there are no buttons we can press to get us where we want to go next. In the advanced editor, we will take a moment to get familiar with the structure of this code. In each line of the code, we define a new table as a transformation of the table defined in the previous step. For example, in this step, we have removed some columns, then we have added a new column, we have sorted the months ascendingly, and we have added the index column. And all of this code was written automatically for us as we were clicking the buttons. So we need to add a new step now and create moving average. Is going to be the name of the new table. To get us started, I'm just going to make that equal to the previous step so we can get familiar with the syntax one step at a time. No syntax errors have been detected. Done. And absolutely no changes here. Now I want to use the same structure for add column as we've seen a few steps above. So table, add column. This is the name of the table we are modifying. Basis was the name of the new column. The name of the new column now is going to be 12-month moving average. And in the previous step, this was the formula that defined each row, the value of each row. We can start by just saying each one. This is going to insert the value 1 in each row. Again, at this point, I just want us to be familiar and comfortable with the syntax for the add column command. Okay, but now we have a new column and all the values are 1. If we want to reference a different column, we have to put it in the square brackets. For example, if we want to reference the column index, we have to put each equal to the index. Okay, so if you recall the 4 steps that I have outlined in Excel before, the first step was to take the basis and create a sublist that contains all the basis values up through the row of interest. So for example, if we are calculating the basis, the 12-month moving average for basis for February 2001, the first step is going to be to take the subset of this column basis from the beginning of time, or from the beginning of sample, through February 2001. So in order to do that, we first need to define the list. We're going to define the list basis as a column of the added index table. Then what we need to do is use the command that will take the subset of this basis list and insert it into a particular row. So how do we do that? If I just Google list dot first 10, this brings me to the syntax of the command that we will be using. Going back to the advanced editor, each list first 10 from the basis list, take everything up through the index of the row that we are interested in. Each element of the moving average column is now a list. List for the first row is just a single number. For the second row will be 2 numbers. For the third row it will be 3 numbers, etc. The next step is going to be to extract the last 12 elements of each of these lists. So we will nest it, list, last 10. Now this is the list that we are working with. This is the list we are working with, and we will extract the last 12 elements. So for example, if you now go to the September 2003, we want the 12 months concluding with 2003. You click on that list, and you have the 12 numbers ending with negative 0.0399, which is exactly the basis for September 2003. Back to advanced editor. Now we need to sum the list. List, sum. At this point, we got the number that's the sum. So for each row, we got the number that's the sum of the previous 12 basis points. Of course, the next step is to divide this by 12. We are almost done. Now, these numbers are very close to what we want, but we are aware that they are in fact wrong for the year 2000 because we did not have 12 previous months to calculate the moving average for January 2000. So perhaps we want the first 12 months to be empty, and we only want this command to work from 2001 onwards. There are 2 ways we can do that. We can either select the month at this point to start after is after or equal to 1/1/2001. And that will now this column will be fine. Or if we want to be more fancy, instead of filtering the rows, we can modify the formula in advanced editor and say if index is less than 12, then null, else the formula that we've used before. And the first 12 months are now null. The rest is calculated as it should be. Let's make it a little bit more fancy. Let's round this column to 4 decimal points. And finally, let's make it in such a way that the rows are descending. We are ready to load. And our job is done. We now have the data from December 2017 backwards, 12 months moving average, or perhaps we want to remove this index. There. Perhaps we want the different colors. We can go to design and choose just simple white colors. Remove the filter. And position the data slightly differently so we can add some commentary on top, etc. From this point, we can start creating charts that track the spaces, that track the moving averages, etc. But we will leave that for some other video.